simple things in a school. Why is there a lockdown? The next question when we talk about these things is, when do you issue a lockdown order? And there's multiple times when you may or may not do that. Different schools want to do it for different reasons. The questions really start coming fast when you start asking those kinds of questions. So I think I've read materials, understand the fleeing part, which to me makes a lot of sense, but at the same point in a school setting, I understand why that evolution hasn't taken place yet, because the people trusted with the care of the children, all of a sudden, where are all the children? We told them to flee, now where are they? They're all, what I mean, they're scattered now. That becomes a problem for them, I think. So it will take time for school officials, the parents, to figure out what things they want to happen in their school, how to best handle different types of situations. Even been involved in it even from the standpoint of government buildings, the county courthouse, evacuation kind of things. There are just so many scenarios, and trying to keep it simple for people to follow. Those are kind of hard things to do when you're talking about people who are coming and going from a building. They're not there every day in the same place. So there's variations out there, but I do think people are open to evolving and looking at new ways of thinking rather than just locking down, doing some other things too.
Well, I think each school has to handle it a little differently, because a lot of schools today aren't equipped with an exit from that classroom other than out into the hallway. So as a parent, I'm a little concerned that if they are going to flee, which I understand, that's the new philosophy, get out of the building, run away, get away from the active shooter. But if they're running out into the hallway, they could be running right into that person who is looking to kill them. So it's, I know at our school, there are some classrooms that have doors exiting to the outside, so they can do that, but other classrooms are not equipped with that. So I think it's something where, as we evolve into the new philosophy and hopefully having armed people in the building, that will definitely help bring that to a point where we can do our best to keep our kids safe.
I just want to respond to how this is such a complicated issue. Even with the run, hide, fight, as Mr. Scriver said, it wasn't that long ago where we were trained to give cryptic information over the PA, and now it's very direct, very clear. The shooter's in the cafeteria, that means everybody on that end, you start running. And there is no code anymore. It's extremely clear, so that our teachers should know where to run. We have designated spots for all of our students to go, but it's interesting because we can't tell our students that. Because what happens if one of our students is the shooter, and they know that all of our students are hiding or running to a spot, and now they've got our students right where they want them. So our teachers know, but not the students. So and even that is a process, because we're changing culture and teaching education, and it's complicated.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about that.
I think to get to your question as why things aren't being done is because up until very recently, the only defense that anybody would put forward on school grounds was denial. No one wanted to believe that this would happen. And then as people started seeing it happening, they're asking questions, how can we stop it? How can we mitigate this from happening? And to be very, very specific, to answer Isis' question, she asked what she wants to do. I can't tell her what to do because I haven't done a security survey of her building. I can tell you what I told my children to do. They're older now, but when they were younger, they attended a public school with an open concept with no doors anywhere to any classrooms. And if I made it very clear from age 7 onward, if you hear gunshots or anything happens, you get out of the building and you just go to the woods across the street from the school and you stay there until I get there. And so parents and other people want very specific answers, and we can't give a specific answer to every specific question because each security question is completely different. what's going to happen in this school will be different than what's going to happen at Hartford High School, that's going to be happening at West Bend High Schools. So, but we all want those answers because those are our kids and we want to know what's going on, but we don't want to take the time to think of the concepts that will help us. This is, it's sort of a big picture thing. It's what will you do, and you have to think in terms of concepts, not a specific answer.
I have one more comment and question, if I may. So at a recent Alice training with my fellow instructors this summer, we were talking that we wouldn't even need to be doing this if we could be, our teachers in schools could be armed. We wouldn't even need this. So that makes me think of a question that I have for Mr. Moss. You know, when you think about the legal ramifications or the ramifications of shooting someone if you had to, if you were in a school armed, the emotional ramifications, you will most likely be sued by their family members and all the things that go along with shooting someone. How would you feel about taking that on your shoulders? And then my other question is around, from a training standpoint, we know that marksmanship is a perishable skill. So, you know, the average concealed carry holder goes to the range once a month, we know. So what would you do, or what do you think should be done? I'm just curious from your standpoint around that as well.
Let me see if I can remember the order of your questions, and you can coach me if I forget. But one of the things you mentioned were legal ramifications. That's one of the reasons I'm a member of the USCCA. They will provide me with legal help. They provide a certain level of insurance. I'm in a situation, I think, where, well, I'm not a wealthy person, so I can't afford the top level of coverage. I certainly would love to have that, but there is coverage there. There's legal advice. There are places to go. I have only one time in my life confronted someone with a handgun. Didn't need to shoot, and I think that's important to understand. This individual was trying to break into my home in Los Angeles County. When he saw that I was armed, he ran immediately. Had he come through the window and been all the way in my home, I would have pulled the trigger. Would I have felt horrible about that? Probably. But my children would be alive. My wife would be alive. I don't know how those things will affect me, but I know, I think from, well, 12 years living in an inner city community, living right next door to the church, being between the Bloods and the Crips in the Los Angeles area, I know what I feel that I will do. I've been in some unusual circumstances for a parochial school teacher, trust me. I could write a book on some of the things that I've had to experience. But organizations like Kevin's exist to help us through those legal loops and hoops. The rest, I have to rely on my Lord to get me through.
You bring up the legal issue. One of the things I thought of, and maybe because of years of being a consumer reporter, is what is the insurance? What would the schools have to do to help to basically have your insurer be signing off on this? I mean, is there additional cost? Superintendent Martell? I would assume you're the one that probably to ask.
Well, no, I'm not.
No?
There's, or Matt can address some of this as well. But two topics that she had brought up, how will you feel if you have to defend someone? The question I always ask people is, how will you feel if you are unable to defend someone? If you have to stand by and watch someone you care about?
Oh, no, I understand that aspect. I just wondered if that's even something that's...
But from a legal point of view, I don't mean to disparage attorneys at all, but laws are intentionally vague so that attorneys can interpret them different ways. There's a very good book out by a man named Chuck Crine called Guns in the Workplace. And Chuck puts it together that if I go to work somewhere and I am disarmed because of a policy at that workplace and a shooter comes in and shoots up the place, I'm going to sue that employer because he took away my right to defend myself. So it's an individual responsibility as well as an individual right to defend yourself. So there certainly will be legal questions, and I can't answer any of them effectively without looking into every single aspect of this. But you can put together a decent legal defense for standing your ground for defending yourself, as long as you do so legally. And again, we need to stress the point that we're telling people to do this legally. This is not the Wild West. This is not just people running around waving guns because they're angry. That's not what we're talking about doing. So from an exposure standpoint, you know, you can sue anybody for anything at any time.
Right, you can argue it both ways.
So that I would much rather have everyone be alive and then go through the legal channels afterwards.
Just a quick info on the liability side. I was a member of the school board when we were trying to bring forth concealed carry within our school. One of the aspects that came up is the liability of the school if we allow this within our property, and the faculty and staff that we allow to carry during school hours. And our insurance through the school, through our carrier, basically, because it was a volunteer that was willing to put himself up for it, and because of Wisconsin's Good Samaritan laws, that the school itself bore little to no responsibility. So from an institutional standpoint, it's not the institution's problem, it's the individual, and the Good Samaritan law kind of helps both sides of them.
Okay, that's good to know. Anybody else?
In fact, if you post your buildings, you can be sued.
I'm sorry.
If you actually post your building saying that guns aren't allowed, you can be sued if something
Oh,
happens.
if you have right.
If you
posted
don't
in your
post, you
building-
gain immunity.
Right, if you post in your building that guns are not allowed and someone has been, right. But again, anybody can be sued for anything. That's really what it comes down to.
I think there would be much greater legal exposure to a school district if they required teachers to do that. That's why my department makes sure that I get the training all the time. I'm required to carry a firearm as a police officer. So, but again, if someone volunteers to do that, it becomes an individual responsibility, not a collective responsibility of the entity, the school district.
I'm interested just as a parent of knowing when we were talking more about the students and what they're being told to do. So right now in the schools, like I think it's fascinating to me because obviously the school shooting that I covered, it was a student who went back into the school. And it makes perfect sense that all of that training wouldn't be given to all the students to tell them what to do. So when you are moving the students, now it is directive. You tell them exactly what to do at that moment. They have no clue until that time.
At this point, that's correct.
Okay. Because I know that at my past employer, we had code words, like Windex was get away from the windows. Whirlybird was go to the helipad, that type of thing. That's no longer the training anymore? Good to know. Okay. Hurdle, I won't go under my desk. That's fine. That was the code word for going under the desk.
Good morning. My name's Ren Kramer. This may be a little bit off topic, but since we've got all these experts here, just a quick question that's been kind of circulating in my mind. As you just mentioned, that school that you reported on was a student that attended that school, which often happens. It's not unusual to have students that belong to that school building cause the problem. Is there any progress being made or any studies being made or work being done with studying the psyche of these students and identifying them prior to having such an incident happen? I know that's a very touchy and gray area, but oftentimes these students do provide some physical thing in their lives that make people aware that they have the capability of doing such a thing. Do our schools discuss this at all? Do our police departments discuss this at all and identifying such individuals ahead of time?
I can't express this from any other point of view other than what I have read on my own. And there is a high correlation to students who are using certain types of medication that seem to be involved with these shootings. Now, these kids are on those medications because certain specific conditions have been noted. I believe the category of drugs are called psychotropic drugs. I'm not sure anybody. Okay. In almost all situations where you have a student shooter, these drugs have played a role in that, and I think it's important for a teaching staff. As part of my orientation meeting with parents, I specifically ask if children, first of all, have any allergies that I need to be aware of. Do they have any medications that they're taking that I need to be aware of? And I think if I were to have, a 7th or 8th grade student who was on a psychotropic drug, it would be one of those things that I would be concerned about. And I would also want to know what kind of follow-up the parent was, giving that child to alleviate that problem. So I think that is an important aspect of knowing your student body, and then also, aiding parents in whatever way you can to make sure that those children are receiving the appropriate counseling and care that they need to have.
Does HIPAA violations play into that at all, and the questions that you end up asking the students? I mean, because that's terrific, and I think it's great that you're able to get some information that parents are willing to volunteer, but I think often we're not given that info.
Yes. Just to answer part of your question, Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School has a very close relationship with a counseling service. If there are any indications or any needs of our students identified by our faculty or by a parent, our families receive free counseling by psychologists, so that we try to